You've been lied to about desire. They tell you to suppress it, shame it, pretend it doesn't exist. But what if I told you that the very force you're fighting against could be the rocket fuel for your greatest achievements? Most men are walking around like leaking batteries, their energy draining away through 1,000 small surrenders to impulse. Every thought indulged, every fantasy entertained, every moment of weakness. It's not just a moral failure. It's power bleeding out of your life. Power that could be building something extraordinary. Here's what nobody wants to admit. Sexual energy isn't your enemy. It's raw creative force. The same fire that creates life can forge art, build empires, and transform your character into something magnificent. The question isn't whether you have this energy, you do. The question is, are you its master or its slave? What I'm about to share isn't theory. It's a framework that has helped countless people reclaim their focus, multiply their output, and finally break free from the exhausting cycle of defeat. But here's the catch: it requires you to see desire in a completely different light. Ready? Before we dive deeper, I've condensed the most powerful strategies into something you can apply immediately. 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust. Before it destroys you, it's waiting in the description below. Grab it now. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if everything you've been told about managing desire has actually made you weaker? Most people treat sexual energy like it's toxic waste, something to be buried, hidden, locked away in shame. The religious crowd says crucify it. The secular world says indulge it endlessly. Both approaches leave you exhausted, defeated, and confused. But here's what I've discovered through years of wrestling with my own nature. Sexual desire isn't a demon to be exorcised or a god to be worshipped. It's energy, pure, potent, creative energy that flows through every human being. And like any energy, it can either run wild and destroy everything in its path, or it can be harnessed to power something magnificent. Think about a river for a moment. Left completely uncontrolled, it floods, destroys crops, drowns villages. But dam that same river intelligently, and suddenly you're generating electricity for an entire city. The water hasn't changed. What changed is how you're directing its force. This is where most people get it catastrophically wrong. They think restraint means suppression. They believe discipline equals denial. So they build these psychological dams that just hold everything back with brute force, and then wonder why they're miserable, anxious, and eventually watching those dams crack under pressure. The framework I'm laying out isn't about white-knuckling your way through life, gritting your teeth every time attraction surfaces. That's not mastery, that's just slow-motion torture. Real transformation happens when you understand what this energy actually is and what it's for. God didn't create sexual desire as some cosmic test to see if you'd fail. It's not a trap. It was designed with a purpose, a very specific context where it flourishes and creates something beautiful. When you rip it out of that context, when you scatter it carelessly across 100 empty encounters or pixels on a screen, you're not just breaking a rule. You're taking rocket fuel and burning it in a trash can. Here's the revelation that changed everything for me. The intensity of sexual desire is actually a clue to its potential. Why is it so powerful? Because it's meant to bond two people for life, to create new human beings, to forge families that last generations. That kind of creative power doesn't just evaporate when you choose not to use it for its intended purpose. It's still there, crackling with potential. The question becomes, where does it go? If you're single, if marriage isn't your current reality, that energy doesn't vanish. You're either going to waste it on shadows and substitutes, or you're going to redirect it into building something real. Your work, your character, your service to others, your relationship with God. This isn't about becoming some cold, unfeeling statue. It's about becoming fully human, someone who experiences desire without being controlled by it, someone who feels the pull without mindlessly following wherever it leads. That's freedom, that's power. And that's exactly what we're going to build together. Let me paint you a picture of the average modern man. He wakes up, checks his phone, and within 30 seconds, his mind is hijacked. An image, a notification, a fleeting thought, and suddenly the day's energy starts leaking. By the time he sits down to work on something meaningful, he's already spent, not physically tired but mentally scattered. His focus is fractured before the day even begins. This is the silent epidemic nobody talks about. We live in a world that has weaponized desire against us. Every advertisement, every algorithm, every carefully engineered piece of content is designed to trigger that primal response. And here's the brutal truth. Most people don't even realize they're under siege. They think these are just normal thoughts or harmless distractions. But there's nothing harmless about hemorrhaging your life force one click at a time. The real tragedy isn't the moment of surrender itself. It's what happens afterward. That fog that settles over your mind. The promises you made to yourself yesterday suddenly feel impossible today. That project you were excited about, now it feels like pushing a boulder uphill. The clarity you need for difficult decisions, gone. Replaced by a vague sense of defeat and a desperate need for the next hit of dopamine. This is where people get confused between suppression and direction. Suppressing desire is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes constant effort, and eventually it explodes back up with even more force. But misdirection? That's letting the ball bounce wherever it wants, convincing yourself you're free while you're actually enslaved to every impulse that crosses your mind. Think about water for a moment. A river flowing wild through a valley will create swamps, erosion, destruction. But that same water, channeled through proper banks, can power entire cities. It can irrigate fields. It can sustain life. The water isn't the problem. The lack of direction is the problem. Your sexual energy operates on the same principle. When it's scattered, when it's constantly being triggered and released in trivial ways, it creates chaos in your life. You become reactive instead of creative. You're always responding to external stimuli rather than building from internal vision. Your relationships suffer because you're relating to people through the lens of appetite rather than genuine connection. And here's what makes this particularly insidious. The culture celebrates this chaos. It calls it freedom and authenticity. But freedom isn't doing whatever you feel like in the moment. That's slavery to impulse. Real freedom is having such mastery over yourself that you can direct this powerful force exactly where you want it to go. The men and women who accomplish extraordinary things aren't people without desire. They're people who've learned to harness it. They've discovered that the same energy that could be wasted can be transformed into relentless focus, creative breakthrough, and genuine love. But first, you have to see the problem clearly. You can't fix what you won't acknowledge. The greatest mistake you can make is treating sexual desire like a wild animal that needs to be caged. Suppression doesn't work. Never has, never will. When you simply push desire down, pretending it doesn't exist, you're not conquering it, you're feeding it in the darkness. It grows stronger, more insistent, until it eventually explodes in ways you never intended. What you need is something radically different. Transformation. Think of it this way. You have a river of energy flowing through you. That river is going to flow whether you like it or not. Your only choice is where it goes. You can let it flood chaotically, destroying everything in its path, or you can channel it with precision, directing that same power to turn the wheels of your creative work, your relationships, your spiritual growth. This is what true chastity actually means, and it's nothing like the pale, lifeless thing most people imagine. Real chastity isn't about becoming less of a man or woman. It's about becoming more integrated, more whole, more powerful. It's the difference between a scattered army running in all directions and a disciplined force moving with united purpose. When your desires are mastered rather than suppressed, you don't lose vitality, you multiply it. Here's the truth that will set you free. God didn't give you sexual energy as some cruel test or cosmic joke. It's a gift, but like any powerful gift, it comes with responsibility. Fire can warm your home or burn it to the ground. The fire itself isn't evil. What matters is whether you control it or it controls you. The pathway forward requires you to understand a critical distinction. There's a world of difference between the sharp, immediate craving of lust and the deep, abiding warmth of genuine love. Lust takes. It's selfish, urgent, and ultimately hollow. It promises satisfaction but delivers only a craving for more. Love gives. It builds. It waits. It transforms both the lover and the beloved into something greater than they were alone. When you redirect your energy, you're not killing desire, you're elevating it. You're asking it to serve a higher purpose. Every time you feel that pull, that magnetic force, you have a choice. You can spend it immediately on cheap substitutes, or you can store it, compound it, and invest it in something that actually matters. Your work becomes sharper. Your prayers become deeper. Your capacity for real connection expands. This is the secret that monks and artists and great leaders throughout history have understood. Sexual energy and creative energy are the same force wearing different faces. The musician channeling passion into music, the writer pouring intensity onto the page, the builder constructing something beautiful. They're all working with the same raw material. They've simply learned to direct the river instead of drowning in it. The question you must answer today is simple but not easy. Will you master this force, or will it master you? The moment you decide to redirect this energy, you'll face an immediate problem. What do you actually do with it? Because here's the brutal truth: if you don't give this force a target, it will find one on its own, and you won't like where it goes. Think of sexual energy like steam in a pressure cooker. You have two choices. Let it whistle out aimlessly through the release valve, or capture it and use it to cook something nourishing. Most people choose the valve. They wonder why they're exhausted, why they can't finish projects, why their prayers feel hollow. The answer is simple: they're leaking power. So let's talk about the channels that actually work. First, your body needs to move. Not casual movement, intense, deliberate physical exertion. When that restless energy starts building, you don't sit there and white-knuckle through it. You take it to the gym, to the running track, to anywhere you can pour it into something concrete. Push until your muscles burn. This isn't just about distraction. It's about teaching your body that energy gets used for conquest, not surrender. The ancients understood this instinctively. Warriors trained relentlessly, not just for battle, but for mastery over themselves. But physical output is only half the equation. This energy is fundamentally creative. It wants to build, to bring something new into existence. That's literally what it's designed for. So redirect it into work that matters. Write, build, create something with your hands. Pour yourself into projects that have been gathering dust. You'll be shocked at what you can accomplish when you're not constantly bleeding energy into fantasy. The greatest works of art, the most profound writings, the innovations that changed the world, many came from people who learned to transmute this fire into focused creation. Here's what most people miss. You need structure. Discipline without a framework is just suffering. Create non-negotiable routines. Wake at the same time. Work in focused blocks. Remove the triggers before they trigger you. Delete the apps. Change your routes. Redesign your environment. If your bedroom is where you fall, make it a place of rest only. If nighttime is your danger zone, fill those hours with purpose before temptation even knocks. And this is crucial: turn outward. Energy trapped in self-focus becomes toxic, but energy poured into serving others transforms into something transcendent. Find someone who needs help. Mentor someone struggling. Engage in your community. When you're genuinely invested in lifting others, you'll find there's less room for the thoughts that used to consume you. Prayer and meditation aren't escape routes, they're training grounds. They teach you to observe your thoughts without obeying them, to feel the pull without following it. Every time you sit in stillness and let a tempting thought pass by without acting on it, you're building spiritual muscle. You're proving to yourself that you're not a puppet to every impulse. The pattern is always the same. Capture the energy the moment you feel it rising, and immediately redirect it into something that builds rather than depletes. Make this your instinct, and you'll stop being a victim of your own desires. Listen, if you're serious about winning this battle, I've laid out the complete blueprint in 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust before it destroys you. The link is in the description and pinned comment. Don't just watch, take action. Get it now while it's fresh. Let me be brutally honest with you: marriage isn't what you think it is. You've been sold a fairy tale, a romantic fantasy where passion solves everything and happiness arrives on a silver platter. That's a lie that will wreck you. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Marriage is the crucible where raw desire gets transformed into something far more powerful than lust could ever be. Most people enter marriage thinking it's the destination, the place where their sexual struggles finally end. They couldn't be more wrong. Marriage is where the real work begins. Think about it this way. Outside of marriage, sexual desire operates like a wild river, flooding wherever it wants, destroying everything in its path. It's chaotic, selfish, consuming. You're chasing satisfaction that evaporates the moment you grasp it. It's an endless cycle of hunger that never fills you, because it was never meant to operate in isolation, but within the covenant of marriage something profound happens. That same river gets channeled. It gains direction, purpose, depth. The energy that was once scattered and destructive becomes focused and creative. This isn't about suppression, it's about elevation. You're not killing desire, you're giving it the only context where it can fully mature into what it was designed to be. The modern world has convinced you that commitment limits passion. Another lie. The truth is that real passion, the kind that doesn't fade after 6 months, only grows in the soil of permanence. When you know someone is yours and you are theirs, not for a season but for life, something unlocks. You stop performing and start connecting. You stop taking and start giving. The self-centered hunger transforms into something that actually builds rather than consumes. Here's what makes marriage so essential in this whole equation of redirecting sexual energy. It's the place where sexuality finally gets integrated with love, sacrifice, commitment, and genuine intimacy. Outside those boundaries, sex fragments you. It becomes disconnected from your whole self, just a physical act chasing a physical high. But in marriage, it weaves together body, soul, and spirit. It stops being about using another person to satisfy yourself and becomes about union, about two people becoming something greater than either could be alone. And this is where most people miss the point entirely. They think marriage legitimizes their lust. It doesn't. Marriage challenges your lust and demands that you transform it into love. That's uncomfortable. That's why so many marriages fail, because people bring their self-centered desire into the relationship and wonder why it doesn't work. They're still operating from the same broken place, just with legal permission now. The man or woman who has learned to master their desire before marriage, who understands how to redirect that energy into productive channels, enters marriage with something invaluable: self-control. And self-control is the foundation of sacrificial love. You can't truly love someone if you can't control yourself. You'll just use them in more sophisticated ways. Marriage isn't the easy answer to sexual struggle. It's the arena where sexual energy finally finds its highest purpose, creating life, building intimacy, expressing covenant love that mirrors something far greater than ourselves. The man who masters his desires doesn't just win a single battle, he inherits an entire kingdom. Let me paint you a picture of what your life looks like 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road when you've truly taken control. First, your mind becomes a weapon. Right now, if you're honest, how much of your mental energy gets hijacked throughout the day? A thought appears. You entertain it. Suddenly 15 minutes have vanished and you're back at square one, feeling depleted. That's not living. That's being lived. But when you've trained yourself to redirect that energy, something remarkable happens. Your concentration sharpens like you've upgraded your brain's operating system. Tasks that used to take hours get done in minutes. You can hold complex ideas in your head without losing the thread. People will start asking what changed, why you seem so much more present, so much more formidable in your thinking. Then, there's the creative explosion. Here's something they don't tell you. Every artist, every builder, every person who's created something that outlasted them understood this principle. That raw energy you're wasting, it's the same force that writes symphonies, builds cathedrals, launches movements. When you stop pouring it down the drain, it has to go somewhere. And where it goes is into your work, your mission, whatever you're building with your hands and mind. You'll find yourself coming alive with ideas at odd hours. Projects you abandoned will suddenly seem possible again. This isn't mystical, it's mechanical. You've simply stopped the leak. But here's where it gets deeper. Your capacity for real love multiplies. I know that sounds backwards: restrict desire and gain more love. But understand this: lust makes you a consumer. It trains you to take, to use, to extract pleasure from others. Mastery transforms you into someone capable of giving, of seeing another person as fully human rather than as an object for your gratification. Your relationships gain dimension. The people in your life can feel the difference, even if they can't name it. You become safe, trustworthy, truly present. And spiritually, the fog lifts. Prayer stops feeling like shouting into a void. Scripture starts speaking in a language you can finally understand. See, constant indulgence builds a wall between you and the divine, not because God is angry, but because you've dulled your own receptors. Mastery is like cleaning years of grime off a window. Suddenly light pours through. You'll experience moments of clarity, of connection that you didn't know were possible. The final gift is this. You stop being afraid of yourself. Right now, part of you doesn't trust you. You've failed too many times, made too many promises you couldn't keep. But string together enough victories, enough days of choosing mastery over impulse, and something shifts in your spine. You walk differently. You meet your own eyes in the mirror without flinching. That quiet confidence, that's not arrogance. That's what it feels like to finally be integrated, to have all of you pulling in the same direction. This is the inheritance waiting for you. The greatest danger in this battle isn't the enemy you expect, it's the one you create yourself. I've watched countless souls take up arms against their desires only to destroy themselves in the process. They become so consumed with not failing that they fail in a far more insidious way. They turn into bitter, obsessed, joyless shadows of who they were meant to be. Let me be brutally honest with you. There's a razor-thin line between healthy vigilance and toxic obsession. You can become so fixated on monitoring every thought, every glance, every impulse that you're no longer fighting lust, you're serving it. You've just changed uniforms. The man who spends 18 hours a day cataloging his temptations and flagellating himself over minor lapses is still letting sexuality dominate his entire existence. He's just doing it with a religious vocabulary now. This obsession masquerades as holiness, but it's actually pride wearing a monk's robe. You start keeping score. You measure your worth by how many days you've gone without stumbling. Then when you inevitably slip because you're human, not an angel, the shame crashes down like an avalanche. And here's the trap. Shame doesn't strengthen you. It paralyzes you. It whispers that you're fundamentally broken, that this fight is pointless, that you might as well surrender completely since you've already failed. I've seen men turn their entire spiritual life into a grim accounting ledger of sexual thoughts. They lose the joy, the wonder, the actual purpose of why they started this journey. They forget that the goal isn't to become some sterile, passionless automaton. The goal is to become fully human, fully alive. Here's what you must understand. Discipline without grace becomes tyranny. If you approach this battle with nothing but gritted teeth and white-knuckled willpower, you're building on sand. The foundation has to be deeper. You're not primarily avoiding something, you're pursuing something infinitely greater. When your eyes are fixed on that higher beauty, on genuine love, on purposeful work that matters, the lesser temptations begin to lose their grip naturally. And here's the paradox that will save you. The moment you stop making your entire identity about this struggle is often the moment you start winning it. When you fill your life with meaningful work, with service to others, with creative pursuits that ignite your soul, suddenly you realize hours have passed without a single intrusive thought. Not because you were monitoring yourself every second, but because you were genuinely engaged in something worthwhile. Balance is everything. Yes, be vigilant. Yes, guard your mind. But don't turn that vigilance into a suffocating prison where you're terrified of your own humanity. The man who never stumbles isn't necessarily the holiest, he might just be the most afraid. True mastery comes when you can acknowledge the power of desire without being controlled by it, when you can face temptation without either surrendering to it or being consumed by fear of it. You're aiming for freedom, not a different kind of slavery. So here we stand at the crossroads. You've heard the truth. Sexual energy isn't your curse, it's your catalyst. But knowing and doing are separated by a chasm that most never cross. The question burning before you now is simple. What will you do with this information? Tomorrow morning, you'll wake up to the same temptations. The same patterns will call your name. The same easy escapes will present themselves with that familiar whisper. And in that moment, you'll make a choice. Not a grand, theatrical choice, just a small one. Then another. Then another. These tiny decisions, stacked day after day, will either build you into someone extraordinary or erode you into someone you no longer recognize. Here's the raw truth nobody wants to say out loud. Most people will watch this video, nod along, feel inspired for about 48 hours, and then drift right back into their old patterns. Not because they're weak or stupid, but because transformation requires more than information, it requires a system. A blueprint, a battle plan you can execute when your resolve is shaking and your mind is making excuses. This is exactly why I created something for those who are serious. 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust. Before it destroys you isn't just another religious pep talk. It's a concentrated arsenal of the most powerful, time-tested strategies that actually work when the battle gets real. The methods that have liberated men from decades of bondage. The principles that turn your weakness into unshakable strength. You'll find it in the description below. But here's what I need you to understand. Downloading it means nothing if you don't apply it. This isn't about collecting information. It's about revolution. About finally breaking the chains you've been dragging for years. The link is waiting. Your freedom is waiting. The only question is, are you done making excuses? Are you ready to step into the man you were created to be? The choice, as always, has been yours from the beginning. But now you have no excuse for staying stuck. Go grab it. Your future self will thank you.